Number 8, Notre Dame, 6.5-point favorites as they welcome number 16, Texas A&M, our Aggies, to town. Last year was a gritty mudslinging contest. It was a game that was fully stocked on defense, not very favorable to either side offensively, and that was ultimately the Aggies' downfall. Connor Wegman looked abysmal, throwing into tight man coverage that the Fighting Irish had. The pass rush gave A&M's offensive line a real test early, and they weren't able to move the football consistently on the ground. Notre Dame didn't really do a ton offensively either, but it was a couple of big broken plays on the ground that ultimately ended up being the difference for the Fighting Irish. I think both of these teams are improved in some ways, maybe some question marks in others as we head into week 3 for Texas A&M. It's just the second game for Notre Dame, and they had a weird bye week after their season opening loss to Miami. Which storyline grabs your attention here as the Ags pay off the back end of a home and home against the Irish?
I think for me, it's going to be the quarterback duels, right? It's the fact that both of these quarterbacks, I think, add a different dynamic to this game. Based on last year, the defenses are both maybe a step behind where they were. I don't think either defense is playing up to the same standard as they were last year, and they certainly have both lost some talented pieces from both sides. But I do think they'll still play the same styles. I think that you're going to see a lot of man coverage out of Notre Dame. You're going to see a lot of kind of rushing the passer, trying to fit your gaps on the Aggie side. And so for me, the fact that you have two very different quarterbacks than you did last year, obviously Marcel Reed, more of the dual threat type quarterback as opposed to the pocket passer that was Connor Wigman. And then obviously, with CJ Carr, he's a young quarterback. He's got a little bit more, I think, juice in that arm than what Riley Leonard had, but definitely not the same style of I'm going to run the ball 20 times a game and we're going to power run our quarterback and find ways to pick up the tough yards. So for me, watching the quarterbacks is going to be a big deal. A&M has a lot of tools for Marcel Reed to kind of assist that, but at the end of the day, he's going to have to prove that he can step up and be that guy, right? He's going to have to show that he is the guy that can lead this offense to be that elite level offense that they're wanting to be, so that you can finally see the success that A&M has been expecting for so long. And I think that you're going to have to see that on the road. He's got a little bit of experience. He's looked fantastic to start the season, albeit, it's UTSA and Utah State. But he's looked really good, hasn't turned the ball over yet. He's got 8 total touchdowns. He's, really doing a good job working his progressions and understanding what he needs to do with the football. And it just looks like the game is a lot slower for him this year than it was last year. You take it over to the Notre Dame side, and I think that CJ Carr, obviously breaking him in on the road is a tough job. And that was something that I thought was going to be a problem for them was, having to go into Hard Rock and find a way to get him to play to his standard. Being able to play this one at home for him is huge. Not having that, going into a tough environment, but instead getting to kind of lean on that home crowd energy so that you can make your decisions at the right timing, I think is going to be huge for him. And obviously being able to hand the ball to a guy like Jeremiah Love is going to be huge too, if they choose to run him this time. I mean, I know they didn't really do very much of that in Miami. But
Yeah.
if they go by the style that they're wanting to go by, then I think they're going to ask CJ Carr to do a little bit less, but that's good for him, right? It's good for him to be effective with the football. And his big challenge is going to be winning from the pocket when they find themselves in more obvious passing downs where you have to kind of extend the play more than just a quick hitter.
That would be good news for Notre Dame because I went and looked to see how CJ did against Miami, specifically when they brought pressure. And my eyes thought, he was nothing special, but certainly that pressure, it felt like disrupted Notre Dame's offensive flow, especially in that first half. They really had a tough time getting the rhythm going. But the numbers actually said that CJ Carr had a really solid first start. According to Yahoo Sports, Carr was 2 for 2 on passes of 20 yards or longer down the field, went 5 of 8 for 100 yards and a touchdown when pressured, and completed 11 of his 15 pass attempts for 91 yards and a touchdown when blitzed, according to Pro Football Focus. So kind of a Patrick Mahomes style stat line where you'd think that playing coverage and getting after him and blitzing him, disrupting that rhythm would actually be the more advantageous side. And listen, it's one data point, right? I mean, it's one game, but for a redshirt freshman making his first ever start on the road to have some of those stats, I was very, very impressed. And so my question for Carr, can he do it again? Can he
Mm-hmm.
stay poised? Texas A&M has, I believe, 7 sacks through their first 2 weeks. They had 6 against Utah State. And while it was less competition, what I think we took away from that game against the Aggies was how versatile A&M's pass rush was. They got to the quarterback with power moves. They got to the quarterback with disguised blitzes. They got to the quarterback by using Cassius Howell just as a freaking weapon off the edge and doing whatever he wanted, right? Notre Dame's offensive line, much better than Utah State's, but he's going to face a lot of pressure once again from Texas A&M. If he can stay poised, that's a huge benefit for the Fighting Irish. You also mentioned they've got to run the ball. And, Sean McDonough made the witness protection joke about Jeremiah Love last week. Jadarian Prince looked fine, but Notre Dame never really became a difference maker on the ground. Texas A&M, if there has been one bugaboo for them through the first 2 weeks, it's been big plays on the ground. The Aggies have already allowed 4 runs of 20 plus yards and 2 runs of 30 plus yards. Only one of those was against the backups. So I think if Notre Dame can find those matchups up front and get the running game going, that's their path to Cover Town. Now, that being said, you described how Texas A&M has taken a step forward in the passing game. Marcel Reed looks markedly better. The danger, I think, in his game is he's been off on some timing routes with his wide receivers, and he's underthrown some balls. He's overthrown others. Those balls get picked off against man defense. And so I do fear that the Aggies are going to commit that first turnover through the passing game, or at least Marcel Reed is this week. But I do think Texas A&M in this revamped passing offense with Colin Klein getting the new weapons and Mario Craver, who's second in the SEC in receiving right now, Casey Concepcion, who's already got a number of touchdowns both in the special teams game and just as a versatile wide receiver. I think the Aggies keep this close. I do have Notre Dame winning this game, but this feels like more of a field goal game to me than a touchdown cover play for the Irish.
Yeah, this one was really tough for me because I went back and forth and I tried to be, really objective, and I'm trying not to let my fans show too much on this one. But for
Here we go.
me, trying to break this down, it became difficult because I didn't really want to believe in the Aggies in this one. I wanted to just be able to come on here and say Notre Dame's the better team. They were just in the national championship game. Don't expect to win this one. But A&M is number 5 nationally in explosive plays. They have a confident running game, even though they haven't really used very much of it. They were just mostly trying to keep backs fresh, I think. And so I think being able to come in here with some very good tailbacks, some good weapons on the outside, be able to extend the run both sort of horizontally, and then be able to get between the tackles and do that. I think that they're going to be able to put up some points, and I think that they're going to strain a little bit of that man defense because the upside and the downsides of man defense is that it's easy to pick apart at the line, right? If you're Marcel Reed and you're able to throw some motion around there and you can see kind of what people are doing and try to identify some shells early, I think he's going to be able to pick some people apart, and it's really tough to cover some of these guys. I would bet no matter who you try to put on him, Casey Concepcion is going to get his on Saturday. It's just not possible to refuse him the football. And even if you do, if you're choosing to go 2 on him, it's going to be Craver, it's going to be Bussy. There are weapons in this Aggies offense, maybe for the first time in like a decade. There's actual
Yeah.
weapons in this Aggies offense that really scare you. For Notre Dame, their big thing is going to have to be controlling this game on the ground and not giving A&M a chance to get in a rhythm or make the most of their opportunities, right? Because like you said, Marcel will miss a pass or two from time to time. And if you can take advantage of those big plays when they come, because they're probably going to come, every 10 or so runs is probably going to bust for a good 30 or 40. But if you can just take advantage of that, flip the field, and try to make sure that you can, put your points up when you can, I think that's your winning game script if you're Notre Dame. However, I do think it is a little bit more likely at this point that you put Notre Dame in a negative game script and they fall apart. I don't think that they can win if they have to pass from the pocket from this game. I don't think that if CJ Carr needs to sit back there, go back and watch that offensive line from week 1. There were some issues on the offensive line in the pass pro. There were some, kind of missed assignments that they didn't look as strong as you normally used to seeing an offensive line at Notre Dame. And I think they're facing a better pass rush. So if you force CJ Carr into catch-up mode, right? If A&M gets up 10 points at any point in time in this game, I think it could get away from Notre Dame pretty quick because I don't think that's where CJ Carr's game is. I think you want to be running the football. So if they can commit to it, if they can have the discipline to just keep running the football and keep with their game plan, great. But if they get behind, I think it's a problem. The other problem for this on A&M side is that this is, and kind of the last thing on this is a spot that A&M hasn't been in, being able to win like this on the road. They're having to fight their own DNA. I'm going to pull it from Tim England on Twitter. Texas A&M football's last ranked road win was in 2014 against Auburn. A&M's last true road win against a non-conference Power 4 team was in 2002 against Pitt. A&M's last win against a ranked non-conference opponent was 1979 against the Penn State Nittany Lions. It's been far too long since A&M has beaten a quality team on the road. I think it's a statement win for the Aggies this weekend. I think they're just going to find a way. I think Marcel Reed is going to get into that, national conversation because I think he's going to put up some big numbers. And I think it's going to be a statement for the Aggies. All of this with a giant parentheses at the end of my notes. I am ready to get hurt again.
Yeah, it's 15 straight ranked road games that the Aggies have lost. And out of conference, it's been a while. It's been a couple decades since they've really beaten a premier opponent in the non-conference slate. I'm excited. I think it's a great test for both teams. I think it should be a good game. That's why I'm kind of surprised the line is as high as it is. It makes me skittish about that because that seems like a what does Vegas know special. There's a couple more of those lines that we'll get to throughout this episode. But please let us know which side of this fence that you're riding on.